You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang, and with me, as always, is Skylar Timmins.
Howdy, howdy. We're good to be here. We got an unpaid intern with us.
Yeah, Skylar, you've brought a guest, unpaid intern, if you want to introduce yourself.
Well, I'm the older brother, Dustin Timmins. I'm a longtime Purple Row fan, and I've been listening since the very first episode of Affected by Altitude, and really humbled to be around and talk a little Rockies baseball with you guys.
And he's also, technically part of Rocky Mountain Rooftop. He is my co-host over at Every Rocky Ever. And if you haven't listened to that, strongly encourage it. It's been cool for me to be able to just sit there and listen to Dustin talk about his fandom of the Rockies as we've gone over the older Rockies and hear him kind of rant and ramble and just kind of share his love of the game with that. So we appreciate him being here.
Yeah, it's nice to have another long or longer suffering Rockies fan. I'm in my 30s. I've been following the team since the mid 90s, so I can relate to having been around the block with this team.
Well, it's just fun having other Rockies fanatics to talk about, because there's not very many of us that can go deep into history or every little thing, because we care what the Rockies are doing on a daily basis. There's not very many of those around, so it's great to be with you guys.
For better or for worse, we care about what the
Yeah.
Rockies are doing on a daily basis. And speaking of what the Rockies are doing on a daily basis, we might as well roll in straight away here. There's been some roster shuffling with the Rockies as of the last week or so, namely that earlier in the week, the Rockies signed Coco Montes. They called up Coco Montes to the big league roster where he made his big league debut. On that same day, they signed catcher and outfielder Jorge Alfaro, formerly a Phillies prospect, and spent a little big league time with the San Diego Padres and was most recently with the Boston Red Sox AAA affiliate. They signed him to a minor league deal, had him play a couple games in AAA Albuquerque, and by the end of the week, he had been called up and starting in games on the main Rockies lineup. The trade-off for that is that the Rockies designated pitcher Blair Calvo for assignment and are now carrying three catchers on the roster right now in Elias Diaz, Alfaro, and then Austin Wynns. What do y'all make of the fact that the Rockies are carrying three catchers on the roster right now? Something they haven't actually done since Elias Diaz really came to town.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, I was talking to Dustin about this and joking of the Rockies technically have two catchers. It's just that Austin Wynns and Jorge Alfaro, with their skill sets, make up one player. Because Jorge Alfaro, he's never been known as a good defensive catcher. He's been serviceable, but usually he's been subpar. And then you add in Austin Wynns, who's a good defensive player, but is awful offensively. Whereas Alfaro's bat has been his calling card most of his career so far. And that's why the Marlins felt comfortable acquiring him to be their everyday catcher when they sent JT Realmuto over to the Phillies. So his bat was always kind of there, but it's never been that great. So it's weird that what's the situation with three catchers? Is it just to give Diaz more time to keep him in the lineup? Is it to give him more days off so he's not feeling the wear and tear of catching? Is it setting up a trade of some kind? Or are they just veterans? We need all the veterans. Give me all the veterans that I can have.
Well, here's my biggest thing, fellas, is why is one of the three DH at bats when we have options, and it again goes to this thing. What are they doing? Everything that's going on, especially this year, is making us scratch our heads on what really is the plan. Why we're wasting a whole roster spot with three guys, that we don't need. It just add it to the pot, right? Elias Diaz he's cooled off, but who hasn't on the roster right now? There's a couple of guys have gotten really hot, but he's still in there battling every day. I was fine with the Austin Wins coming in. That follows suit. We got a solid defensive guy that's going to hit 150, and now we're throwing another guy just to get less at bats and less playing time for another. I don't get it. One of them's got to go, and we'll see what happens. But it just boggles my mind because there's guys that need to get at bats, and guys that just got called up need to be getting at bats.
The big thing for me that made no sense about this move was designating Blair Calvo for assignment, a guy who was already on the 40, a good arm that you could see if you can get anything out of on a team that desperately needs pitching with an exhausted bullpen. And I love Blair Calvo. He's got a 70 graded slider. He is down to AAA Albuquerque this year. He had a 12.5 strikeouts per 9 because that slider is really that good. He even made his big league debut this year and had a pretty solid debut. And they turn around and they designate him for assignment when it's pitching this team needs more than anything. We don't need more position players. We don't need more catchers. Granted, a lot of our catching prospects are a little bit further away than you would like. Drew Romo is still really trying to figure out, the lower and middle levels of the minor league. Hunter Goodman, defensively, not amazing at catcher, though his bat is really good, but he still hasn't even made it to AAA. And then you have guys like Willie McIver, who's missed pretty much the entire season with injuries, and not really another, I would say, major league caliber catcher down in AAA. You've got Brian Servin, who to me it appears the Rockies are not super sold on him anymore, and Daniel Cope. And I just don't know about it. And so I'm okay with carrying the two catchers because you've got Elias Diaz, you've got Austin Wins, and in a vacuum, I don't hate the Jorge Alfaro signing. What I hate is getting rid of a pitcher that we could have used and immediately gunning for Alfaro, who Alfaro has had basically one full season at the major league level, and it was back in 2019. And that was with the Miami Marlins, solid season, 262, 312, 425. He had 18 home runs, and he hasn't hit double-digit home runs since then, and he hasn't played more than 100 games since then. And just really, really weird to me, especially because you're right, there's so many other guys who could be using these at-bats. If you need an everyday DH, why on earth aren't you giving those at-bats to Alaris Montero, who I know has been struggling, but he also isn't playing that much. You can't find a rhythm. You can't find a groove when you're not getting consistent playing time. And this is something we've been saying since last season.
And it's, we'll throw out a Flash reference. That's in everybody's mind right now is the hot new movie, The Flash. But the whole season this year has had these weird shades of the past for the Rockies. A lot of the bad in the past. And Jorge Alfaro kind of fits that Willeen Rosario mold, where, yeah, this guy has a pretty decent bat, but offers you nothing defensively, really. Why is he on the roster when you could be playing? No, even Mike Moustakas could be the DH right now because they lost Charlie Blackmon, who broke his hand, was a big fracture, broke his hand in that Kansas City series.
I think they said pinky and ring finger on that hand. 4 to 6 week recovery time.
So they've lost that DH. The easy pivot is, okay, Montero, here's your chance. You're a guy that doesn't really have a defensive position. Let's see what you can do just with your bat right now and see if that's a fit somehow, or if we can maybe build up some value for you. Mike Moustakas, hey, you're our veteran guy. We like having you around. That's fine in the clubhouse. Here's a way for you to get some more playing time. You can be our DH for now. There's really no reason to have Alfaro unless it was them worrying about losing him because of another opt-out in a minor league contract or something. So it's this weird continuing trends of making these weird, I want to say boneheaded moves, just these weird moves that block guys and kick off guys that really don't need kicked off your roster right now for another veteran that doesn't bring much value to a team in the Rockies position. Any thoughts, Dustin?
No, that's where we're at, and I've been going at it for a long time, since '93. But it is we need arms, and that was one of the things that was not addressed in the off season, and it's this huge wound that everybody sees, but we're adding, it's in our right elbow is where we have this huge wound, but we're putting Band-Aids on the left arm. Things that have nothing to do with anything. And these getting rid of a quality arm that he did all right in his very brief stint there with the Rockies in Calvo. They need arms. And another guy, sitting up, taking up a space on the bench. And it's really frustrating because in those few games that he was with Albuquerque, Alfaro lit it up. He doesn't AAA Albuquerque, and they bring it up. And the same thing with Montero. He went back down and got those consistent at bats, and we saw there's those power numbers jumping up. There's the consistency coming just to get flipped back up to the major league roster, and boom. Puttered out, and we're thinking, well, what's going on with Montero? Well, he's a guy that needs those at bats instead of whatever else that the Rockies want to do.
Yeah, and it's and this team has, I admit, this team has done better this year about playing its younger guys. And granted, a lot of that is them being sort of forced into it, arm behind their back, pinned up in an arm bar, because of injuries, because of Chris Bryant and Charlie Blackmon and CJ Cron, and a smattering of other guys. That's why guys like Nolan Jones and Coco Montes are playing. And fine, okay. And there are some veterans on this team who, I am okay with, at least for the time being. Like Mike Moustakas, everyone has been glowing of his presence in the clubhouse, and I think that kind of thing is important. But then they keep stumbling over themselves when it comes to getting guys like Montero consistent playing time, or the first stint with Nolan Jones, and then they get rid of an arm, and this bullpen is so worn down. And I think we're starting to see the signs of overuse with Brent Suter and Jake Bird not being as sharp. And that's because this starting rotation is maybe the worst I have ever seen, where it is Kyle Freeland, who will string together some good starts and they get completely blown up, and a bunch of other guys who can't make it past 4 innings, can't make it past 3 innings.
Yeah, and then speaking of one of those guys, he's no longer on the team with Dinelson Lamet getting DFA'd.
Dinelson Lamet made his 4th and final start for the Colorado Rockies, and was promptly designated for assignment after getting just completely shelled by the Atlanta Braves. And I get it. The Braves are a good team. They are a damn good team. But this is not new, and it's not exclusive to playing the Braves. Dinelson Lamet made 4 starts as a starter, and as a starter for the Rockies had an ERA of 10.80. That ain't good.
Would that be that Scooby-Doo meme where it's Jose Urena, but then we pull off the mask and it's, or Dinelson Lamet, we pull off the mask and it's Jose Urena still?
we were making the joke of like, well, what do you think Jose Arena's up to right now? And like, I admit I was on board for letting Lamet try and be a starter again.
Mhm.
Originally a really good starter with San Diego before he had his Tommy John. Him out of the bullpen at the beginning of the season wasn't really working. Goes down to the IL. When he comes off the IL, they're like, all right, well, let's stretch you out and see what you can do as a starter again. Did really well in AAA Albuquerque and a couple of rehab starts, but it just wasn't working at all. And so he's been designated for assignment. I don't think he's going to get picked up on waivers by anybody. So it really is more of seeing, is he going to accept a minor league assignment, or is he going to get released outright? Because there's no way anybody picks him up. It's not going to happen with how he pitched this year. And then the Rockies then need to figure out, well, then who's going to make that start? Because we are already so extremely thin in the rotation that, Noah Davis will be back soon. He should hopefully start with the Rockies in the next week or so. But then we still have glaring issues with the rest of the rotation. Cleveland Guardians just designated Toki Toussaint for assignment. I can see the Rockies trying to pick him up, but I'm just this roster is in such a weird spot right now, and I'm not really sure what we're going to do about it, because Bill Schmidt, and I don't know how much you can take him at his word, said that any trades and trade talks are still a couple weeks out, more towards the deadline. So I don't know if that means that they're not going to bother doing anything until the deadline. But then we don't know if they're going to bother doing anything at the deadline at all, considering this team's MO.
It's a weird spot with all that rotation, and I'm with you. It was there was nothing to lose letting Lamet start. They were desperate for starters. He had a history. Let him see if he could do anything. And you got to give credit to the Rockies. At least they gave him a chance. It didn't work out, but instead of throwing him out there again and again out of desperation, okay, it's not working, we're going to cut him loose. And best of luck to you. Maybe you'll stick around for some depth, but we're not going to wait and see. So beggars can't be choosers, but you also can, because he wasn't providing much. And so there's still some young guys that might as well give them a chance to see if they can figure something out. In Noah Davis, he had a good outing before arm troubles. Carl Kaufman, he got roughed up in his brief stint this season, but maybe he can come back and give him a little bit longer look at, because we've seen what that could do for a guy like Connor Siebold, minus his Saturday start while we're recording this. But you also have Luis Cesa down there in AAA Albuquerque, a minor league depth signing that you got. Logan Allen's down there, the old one, not the young, really good starting pitcher for the Guardians now, which is weird in itself that they got two Logan Allens for the Guardians. And then it kind of falls off. Ty Block's been starting down in Albuquerque. You had Phillips Valdez. It's a weird spot, and you don't have anybody producing at a consistent, bona fide ace level of, okay, every time this guy's going to come out, we're going to have a really good outing out of him. It's a throw your hand up in the air and throw your head up and like, where's it going to land? How's this going to turn out? And it's a rough situation for that rotation, and it's going to be a problem throughout the season. Hopefully, come December, Evan, you and I can be having conversation of, okay, this is what the Rockies are doing to address their starting pitching woes for the coming year. But for right now, it's just a big black hole that they're just destined to have awful pitching this year.
Yeah, and it's like you said, down in Albuquerque, there's really no one who's an immediate upgrade. Carl Kaufman has potential, and Ty Block if you're desperate, but then you have guys like Jeff Criswell, who has shown some flashes, but has a 3.1 home runs per 9, a 4.5 walks per 9. Granted, does have a 9.5 strikeouts per 9, because we always say when it comes to ERA in Albuquerque, that can be ignorable at best because of how hard it is to hit down, how hard it is to pitch down in the PCL, especially down in Albuquerque. But when you look at all of his other numbers, they're not great either. And you don't want to just turn to Hartford or something and drag up a guy who's not ready to go. And, sometimes that works out. Both Noah Davis and Gavin Hollowell made their MLB debut straight from AA Hartford. This kid, Emmett Sheehan, that was pitching for the Dodgers on Friday night, who pitched 6 no-hit innings against the Giants. He was a straight from AA call-up. But I'm not sure the Rockies have anybody who would be ready to face that challenge in AA right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Little to none. That's why we were saying, joking beforehand, Dustin's getting the call.
Oh, man. It's scary because then we see all these stats, going up on teams, how many days it's been since they, or how many pitchers have thrown 100 miles an hour, 97 plus, nothing. And then we go, what was it, the one that we saw today about a pitcher that's had 10 strikeouts in a game? When's the last time we had a starter go past 6 innings? That's how bad it's been this year. And I'm one of those on the wagon of clean house on the pitching coach side of stuff. But what's killing him, what happened to Lamet? He couldn't throw strikes. He pitched 25 in the third innings, 22 walks. You're not going to have success walking 7.7 guys every 9 innings. And it was the same thing with Urena. And we're seeing now the bullpen, this overused bullpen, taxed to the breaking point. They get in and can't throw strikes. And it's just snowballing. And like you guys said, there's nobody down in AAA that's going to come and make any big difference. Who do we have in AA right now? Gabriel Hughes is a guy that we're looking to the future. He's still trying to get things figured out as well. There's just no guy that, and we've been talking, and when's the last time the Rockies had that pitching prospect that actually showed results? That was, wow, this guy's lights out, and he's proving it. It's been a long time because the thing about the Rockies, they always go on this potential. They have this upside, but they're not showing the results at all anywhere. But this is the guy. We're going to these veterans and saying, well, Lamet, he was a Cy Young candidate 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Chris Bryant was an MVP 8 years ago, how long ago it was. It's always this, maybe we're going to have that, catch that, revive them real quick. The days of the Rockies reviving guys' careers long gone. We can think of those as we're doing the every Rockies ever. We look at guys and be like, holy cow, look at that 1 year that came to the Rockies and, revived their career and then retired, or, they blossomed and then done. That hasn't been happening to the Rockies for a while now. And it always gets, and I know we've got some guys like that come up. Matt Caracity has done a great job. He's been lights out since he came up recently. But Peter Lambert, we're still stuck on what his potential was 5 years ago. And we're not seeing that step up. And it's real frustrating when we see our good buddy John Gray, who's having an amazing season with the Rangers. And we're like, where's that guy again? He was a big name prospect out of Oklahoma. This is our guy. And he was up here, and there was flashes that he was the guy. And then we let him go on, and we're like, man, we had that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Let me tell you a fun stat before we cut for ads. Outside of Kyle Freeland and Austin Gomber, so we are 74 games into the season or something like that. How many starts have we had that went past 5 innings outside of Gomber and Freeland?
We could probably count them on one hand.
It's 10, and half of those guys aren't on the roster right now.
Man.
And I agree with you. We were talking about this a little bit earlier today, is that the Rockies have this weird idiosyncrasy about them where they're obsessed with guys that they really liked but didn't end up with at first, and guys that were really good 5 years ago. And it even came out when Bill Schmidt was talking, it was like, oh, we loved Nolan Jones in the draft. And Cleveland really loved Juan Brito. So, it worked out that we swapped him. And like the only difference there is that Nolan Jones isn't pushing 32, which worked out for us this time, but it's exactly how it turned out with Mike Moustakas and Chris Bryant and all these other guys. And it's just, like you said, it's not the same of where we're reviving people's careers. Like Mike or letting them have a final flash at the end. Mike Moustakas is not, Jason Giambi back in the early 2010s or anything like that. And he's certainly doing okay, but none of that pushes us anywhere near competitive baseball. And for a team that claims to be a draft and develop team, they're not very good at it.
Nope. One last joke. Bill Schmidt reminds me of how he approaches getting players. He's like that guy in high school that had crushes on these girls, but just never acted on it. And then he's just been following them and sees that the relationship says they're like divorced or single now, and he's sliding into those DMs. But that lady's divorced or single for a reason now, and he's fallen for the trap. Also, she has 10 cats.
There's nothing wrong with having cats.
But 10 of them, Evan.
Yeah, it's a lot of cats, but I don't know. It's just this team is really strange. And Renee Deckert on Purple Row and several other websites, like she was really wondering if the carrying 3 catchers thing was going to mean that a trade was coming for Elias Diaz or something. And I just don't know. I don't. And they've been a little bit better. I will admit, like they've made several trades since Bill Schmidt took over, but they haven't done it where it counts.
Mm-hmm.
And I just need to see that. And if the Rockies don't do anything this deadline, I don't know.
We riot.
Or something. But we're going to take a really quick ad break here. Stick around, and hopefully we have a little bit more positive things to talk about here in our second part here. So hang tight for just a minute. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude. I'm Evan Lang. With me is Skylar and Dustin, the Brothers Timmins. And we just finished talking about some not so fun stuff. So we're going to talk about some things that might make us a little bit happy. And that's going to be the fact that there are some rookies playing on this team. And some of them are even doing pretty darn good. And we're going to start with Nolan Jones, who has just been really, really great since he came to us here. He had a poor showing in spring training. Unpopular decision was made to option him to AAA Albuquerque to start the season. He tore the cover off the ball in AAA, and we finally called him up for the second time and started actually letting him play, and he has been just really good. So in AAA Albuquerque, he was hitting 356, 481, 711 with an OPS of 1.192 and 12 home runs. Drew 33 walks to 43 strikeouts. And he's obviously not replicating the same performance here in the bigs because, it's a totally different level of play, but he is still playing really, really well. Nolan Jones is hitting right now. He is one of the best OPS on the team of 963, 324, 400, 563 in 21 games played and 71 at bats. He has 4 home runs, 5 doubles. He has drawn 9 walks, which is pretty solid, to 25 strikeouts. So he is striking a little bit more, but that's to be expected with the higher quality of pitching up here. And then also has 4 stolen bases. He's been really toolsy. He's hitting, he's running, he's fielding, cannon for an arm. Exactly what we were hoping he would be when the trade brought him in. What are you guys thinking about Nojo?
Take it away, Dustin.
Oh man, he's shown what they brought him over for, from what they liked back in high school. When he got drafted, we went to a game a couple weeks ago they had the youth baseball day, and we paraded around the field with our team, the Capybaras. But he hit an Oppo home run that game, and then we've seen those monstrous home runs that he's hit as of late. The walk off the other day, in the rain delay game. You see this power. We've seen great athleticism from him in the outfield, making great plays, running catches. That arm is no joke. He's got a cannon, and we've seen now that he's been playing almost every day now, every game, and he fits. And he's an exciting guy, and getting on the base paths, stealing bases, and he's playing with the swagger. I think kind of defines what these Rockies rookies right now are doing. They're getting their shot and showing that I need to be here, and I need the time. I need the playing time.
Uh-huh. It's cool to see him because I like you mentioned that swagger, because what do we see from Brenton Doyle or Ezequiel Tovar? They've got that confidence and swagger about themselves that's helping their play. Now, Brenton Doyle's bat isn't what we hope it can be, but his defense has been elite, has been fantastic. Same with Tovar, whose bat is continuing to heat up. But Nolan Jones, it's fun to watch because I always liked when they brought him over, that potential that he has. And he's playing his way onto the roster, kind of reminiscent of a Carlos Gonzalez. There in that 2009, he kind of had that struggle, but the Rockies stuck with him and gave him that opportunity. And what happened? Cargo started to fire off with his defense, cannon of an arm, and it was showing the immense power that he had. Yeah, Nolan Jones is going to strike out, and I think that's just part of his game. He can still figure out how to improve that. But if he can continue to hit and get on base to offset the strikeouts, learn how to draw up more walks, but just keep putting bat to ball, because you're doing some pretty good when your name is in conversations for exit velocity and distance, with Giancarlo Stanton, Cargo, way Ryan McMahon's been mashing the ball this year, regardless of the results of those hit balls. But he's mashing. He's got that power. He's got that exciting power that Evan and I talked about last week that the Rockies are just missing. And I just look forward to Nolan Jones, going on a tear. That good, like one of those classic Carlos Gonzalez hot streaks that we saw in the past, where he's just rattling off dingers, every other day. He's a fun, exciting player. That's the best part of these young guys, is they're exciting. It's fun to watch them, and fun to watch them play together, because they're teammates. They played together. They're buddies. And so then that clubhouse would seem like it'd be a lot of fun with these young guys coming up from AAA and playing together that have been growing up, over the course of this season or over the course of several years.
Yeah, you saw that with Alan Trejo when he was up at the club. Earlier, is that he and Tovar really clearly were buds on the field. But the thing with Nolan Jones is he really does remind you a bit of Cargo. in multiple ways, with the attitude, with the swagger. He's a delight to see get interviewed. Super high energy. He's out there having fun and smiling and laughing with his teammates. But then he'll also make an absolute cannon throw from deep in right field and make an amazing play. And it says a lot that Nolan Jones is already in the top 10 for most valuable players by RWAR on this team. He's number 7 right now, and he's 1 win above replacement. And Doyle's not terribly far behind him, because Doyle, his bat's not been great, but his defense has been amazing. And both of those guys have, positive DRS in the outfield, which is not something we get a lot of as Rockies fans. You have guys like Jurickson Profar, even Charlie Blackmon, Chris Bryant, they're all in the negatives. But then you turn to Nolan Jones, who has 2 DRS in right field, and Doyle, who's got 3 in center, and you feel a little bit better about where this outfield is at. And hopefully, I've enjoyed Jurickson Profar on this team as the person. He's a lot of fun, smiling all the time, good presence, but he's not, or at least should not be, a permanent fixture on this team. When you have guys like, Zach Bean, Benny Montgomery waiting in the wings, Sean Bouchard will be back at some point, if not this year, then next year. And he was really, really fun to watch last season. It's nice to see when the young guys are playing and the young guys are doing well. It gives you something to, it's way more fun. I would rather watch a team lose 110 games and be full of exciting young rookies than watch a team that loses only 90 games, but it's full of veterans who are just okay.
Mm-hmm. But it's like when I went to that Isotopes game, what was it, like a month and a half ago or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they lost the game and they struck out like 17 times as a team. But this was like right before Brenton Doyle got called up. And I just remember it was a fun game to be at, to watch these young guys growing. And they show those highlights, and it's easier to swallow a young guy kind of struggling a little bit as opposed to a Chris Bryant struggling type of thing, because the expectations are different. Whereas with the rookie, I expect you to just learning and growing and showing you can perform, like we talked about, showing the results instead of just the talk and the hype about you, but actually living up and showing results. And Nolan Jones is doing that, and it's good to see. Tovar is doing that. Brenton Doyle is showing aspects of that. And some of those younger pitchers that are getting some time to grow and shine. And Coco Montez should be getting more opportunities to do that. But they just love Harold Castro. Herlin Harold, as we've heard now. But it's nice to see these youngsters getting the chance to prove themselves and deliver on the goods in a lot of aspects.
Yeah, and it's something they need to be better at. For every Brenton Doyle and for every Nolan Jones and Ezequiel Tovar, you've got what they've done with Alaris Montero, and right now where Coco Montez is only getting about 2.5 at bats per game after being up for a week. If you gotta let all of the kids play at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's, at the beginning of this year with Tovar, we're like, man, maybe he's not ready for it. And he worked through the process. And, you see that confidence in him. Sure, we nitpick his at-bats and, here comes the slider he's going to swing at. But that's a rookie thing in the majors. He will adjust. He's putting the bat on the ball with putting it in the gaps for the doubles. He's looking at his stats. That's what we need from him. Put the bat on the ball in the gaps, use your speed, and he's figuring it out. On the defensive side, there was never any questions, but now he's figuring up to 255 batting average, and I can do that. It's not a another Iglesias out there for the year. You know, this is our guy. We're going to stick with it. Now, we need his partner for this year because Brendan Rodgers is not coming back this year, more than likely. And so who can we I kind of the Harold Castro, I'm like, oh, come on, man. We had Alan Trejo. You know, he's one of our guys. Let him ride it out too. Now the Coco Montes came up and it was it's always awesome when these guys make their big league debut. His mom made the game. You know, he got his first at bat, first hits a home run that sparked that game to, you know, that's a special moment. And like the next day he goes 0 for whatever, and now he's on the bench. Well, come on, let him work through it. And it's like you guys said, it's so much easier to watch the young guys go through than what we talked about before. Now we have this Alfaro's up here. What? You know, why is and everything, but it's exciting, these guys that are out there, and you see that energy. Brenton Doyle, we've been waiting for that center fielder again to make those diving plays and know if that ball's in the air, he's going after it. He's going to get it. We got Nolan Jones on either corner, and with that arm, Tovar and all that, we're like, yes, this is getting us excited. And they just got to, like I said, trust that process and get through it. You know, if we can get Buddy Black to kind of do that with a couple of the other guys, it's in there. We just got to, you know, keep hoping for the best.
And it's like, and I'm not even against some of the platooning that they've been doing. Like, if you want to be, you know, so Nolan Jones is mostly playing right field, and honestly, I think that's the best spot for him because you are wasting him if you just have him locked to first base with how quick he can move and the plays he can make and the arm that he has. Right field should be his spot. And it's a bummer that it took Chris Bryant being hurt for him to really get that opportunity, but that's got to be his gig for the rest of the season. And for first base, it really should be right now. It should be Moustakas and Montero, with Montero getting the lion's share of those starts. And if he's not starting at first base, he's starting at DH. And it's the same for, if you're platooning anywhere, it needs to be the rookie who's getting the bulk of those starts. Like Harold Castro being an everyday player is going to make me strangle somebody. And I like Harold Castro, but Coco Montes is here. And he's got nothing left to prove down in AAA. It was the same with Alan Trejo. And I'd much rather it be Trejo and Montes platooning, but then who are you going to have pitch, I guess?
Yeah.
But
can Castro start? He could become a two-way player. He's our Shohei Ohtani.
yeah, except for
Minus all the power.
Can't hit home runs.
Yeah.
He came close on Saturday.
He is very similar to Jonathan Daza in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And Dustin, you were talking about, like, you know, Ezequiel Tovar over Jose Iglesias last year. Iglesias he'd get on base, he'd get base hits, even hit a couple home runs, but his at bats were always so empty compared to Tovar, who's got the second most RBIs on the team right now with 30, right under Ryan McMahon's 38. He's got the second most doubles on the team under Ryan McMahon. He's got a triple. He's got 6 home runs, one of the unfortunately larger numbers on this team. So, like, Tovar is interesting and fun and exciting and really being productive. Like, Ezequiel Tovar is having an above 1 WAR season right now and has the potential, like, if he keeps playing like he is, he could probably hit like 2 or 3, if he really kicks fire, potentially even 4 wins above replacement. Like, he's one of those guys where he could sneakily end up with votes for Rookie of the Year. Same with Nolan Jones. And we have all of these young position players who are great and ready to go. And that's such an issue with these Rockies, is that they go out and they get their veterans for their veteranosity, and they get them in the wrong places. Like, we did not need position player veterans this year.
Nope.
Arguably, maybe one as like a bench bat. So like, okay, Mike Moustakas, he can stay. We'll keep him, or keep Jurickson Profar. You did not need Moustakas, Profar, Castro. You don't need them. And then you bring in another veteran in Austin Wynns and another veteran in Jorge Alfaro. Where they should have been seeking veterans is on that pitching staff. And they didn't do it. They kept Jose Arena, and outside of that have been hunting for scraps out of the bargain bin. And you know what? A couple of times that's worked out. Chase Anderson has been great. And you know, they did acquire Connor Siebold, who, you know, in 3 of his last 4 starts was pretty good. But it's just such a bummer to see, you know, these young guys losing out on playing time to veterans, because we're seeing how much fun it is to watch the kids play.
Mm-hmm. And it's because they still have that, I guess that glistening in their eye, where they have that future ahead of them, where they're experiencing the big leagues, you know, for the first time, or, you know, haven't experienced it very much, like Nolan Jones, who has like had a month of service time, you know, a month's worth of games before the Rockies called him up and started to play him more. Those guys are getting that experience to learn how to be big leaguers. And you know, you think back with minor league baseball, that's what makes minor league baseball so special for people in those towns that those guys play in, because they develop a relationship there in real time as they're growing as players. They're growing relationships with the fans there that are watching them, you know, and builds up that fan base in the organization. So then when they do come to the big leagues, we're invested in them and we're ready to watch them play. I'm not invested in Jurickson Profar. I like him. I think he's done some good stuff, but I don't have that same excitement about him as I do of Ezequiel Tovar or even a Montero, so to speak. So the Rockies are better off if they want to become that new Generation R 2.0 or whatever, become that true
toddlers.
Yeah. Or were they Chuck's children recently?
Bryant's the toddlers, and then Chuck and the children.
Yeah. Are they going to be Bryant and Bryant's babies?
McMahon is old enough that you could do McMahon and the Munchkins.
McMahon and the man children.
Kyle and the kids for Kyle Freeland.
There you go. So, but you kind of get what I'm saying. We're invested in the youngsters because that's who you grow up with, or who you follow, and who you have, you know, those hopes and dreams for.
I think another thing is, I know that with those rookies, they're not tied to ridiculous contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Bryant.
Yeah, because we're stuck with them. It's like, well, the only reason they're on the field is because they are owed money.
Ian Desmond.
And that's the frustrating thing for me, is seeing that Profar, is he, you know, he's been doing good, but we can't move him. You know, if trade deadline, nobody's going to want to pick that up. Nobody's going to want to touch Chris Bryant ever. Randall Grichuk. I love the guy. He came back from the IL and was on fire. Not seeing the home runs, but we're, you know, and that one I'm like, but I got Doyle, so there's my guy.
Yeah, I'm okay with Grich because, you know, this is the last year of his contract, and the Blue Jays paid a decent amount of his salary over the last 2 years. So fine. But you've got Profar on a $7.75 million contract that can get even higher. Chris Bryant with a full no trade clause, no opt-outs, no options, was 7 years, $182 million. And we've defended KB a decent amount on the show because he is still a good player. But the Rockies really tied their hands behind their back with that contract. And when he comes back, if he can't start doing what this team needs him to do, then we're really going to struggle. And it's, you mentioned Ian Desmond. Ian Desmond did the Rockies a tremendous favor by stepping away from the game of baseball to focus on his philanthropic and community efforts. And I really admire Ian Desmond for what he does in the community and trying to, grow youth baseball in his home area. But he did the Rockies a huge favor by stepping away 3 years into that contract.
Mm-hmm.
And, I doubt Chris Bryant is going to step away or anything like that. And the Rockies have been willing to eat some money this year. Like they swallowed their pride with the Jose Urena contract, who's getting paid $4 million, but you're not going to swallow $182 million.
Nope.
But at the very least, this season we've had Nolan Jones and Ezequiel Tovar, Brenton Doyle, Coco Montes, Gavin Hollowell is back up with the team and had a pretty solid 2-inning outing for his first big league appearance of 2023. And Noah Davis and all these other guys, and that's what gives you hope for the future of this team. It's not guys like Elias Diaz, who I was lamenting the other day, where, man, imagine if Elias Diaz was 5 years younger, if he was like 27 or 28 instead of 32 going on 33, how set you would feel at that position, having this young guy there. And that's what the Rockies have a chance to do this season, is cement the young guys as the future of this team.
And let them play. And if you feel like, yeah, this isn't what we're looking for, you can cut bait, move on to the next thing, and figure out what you need to do then. Montero,
do something.
They don't want anything to do with him. Okay, see ya. Here's what we're doing here at first. Chris Bryant, you're our first base in the future because we have nowhere else to play you.
Honestly, fine. I'd be fine with that if you made the decision, because it shows that they're at least making the decision of, it's not going to work out with Alauris. And honestly, I think that's where we're getting to. We're very clearly seeing that this team is not particularly enamored with Alauris and doesn't really want his services. And if you actually make that decision, that's fine. I have no problem with that, because it means you're being proactive with the situation and trading him or doing something instead of just letting him languish on the bench, languish in AAA. And I wonder if it's because they don't want to cut ship because they know he was the big headline of the Nolan Arenado trade. All the other guys are gone. Austin Gomber is really struggling. But at this point, if you're not going to play him, cut bait. Let him go somewhere else. And then, yeah, fine. Teach Chris Bryant how to play first base. And then that frees up right field permanently for Nolan Jones.
Yeah, or like Zach Veen or whoever's coming up. No,
yeah,
that's the whole even kill with the rookies. That's the lifeblood pipeline. Guys come in, they don't work, you flush them out. That's baseball.
For everybody watching on the video where I just grimace really bad, is because I just got a wicked Charlie horse right in my thigh. That's what talking about this team does to me.
The injuries will always come back to get you.
It was worse than we thought.
We're gonna have to amputate.
Oh man,
I think that's a good point for a new break there, Evan.
Yeah, we're gonna take a quick break here. When we come back, we're gonna talk about something a little bit different. So don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back to Affected by Altitude. Evan, Skyler, and Dustin once again. Talking about something a little bit different, which is your Denver Nuggets.
Evan, I will fix that. Your NBA champion Denver Nuggets.
I was about to say your Denver Nuggets, I was pausing for dramatic effect, are the 2023 NBA champions. bringing the second major sports title to the city of Denver and the state of Colorado in the last 2 years. The third, if you count the Mammoth, who won last year, and unfortunately were defeated by the Buffalo Bandits in the finals for the NLL this year, but valiant effort to run it back. But we now have, for the first time in 47 years, ending the longest championship drought in the city, are the Nuggets, who played an incredible season, had the West tied up so early that for like the last 2 months of the season they really didn't have to try, and then just blew through their competition in the playoffs, where they made fine work of the Timberwolves. Arguably the Suns put up the biggest fight with those two games, especially the ones where Booker and KD just absolutely blew us up. And you know, that was in a game where Jokic had 53 points and swept the Lakers and took a gentleman's sweep from the Miami Heat. And really what it is now the Rockies are the only team in the Major Four to not have a championship. And the question is, and we've talked about this before, we've written about this before, what the Rockies can learn from your 2023 NBA champion Denver Nuggets.
So much.
I mean, you're not wrong. For me, the biggest thing is, and I've written about this before, is the ownership. Is the way that the ownership interacts with the team. As you all may know, the owners of the Nuggets. Owner of the Nuggets is Stan Kroenke, owner of Kroenke Sports Entertainment. He also owns the Los Angeles Rams, the Colorado Avalanche, the Colorado Rapids, the Mammoth, and he also owns Arsenal in the Premier League for soccer. Stan Kroenke is not a great guy by all accounts. We all know how he, took the Rams out of St. Louis and all that other stuff. But as a sports owner, he is kind of the polar opposite of Dick Monfort, where Stan Kroenke, his teams are an investment. He does not care. He does not show up until something big is happening. So like, he was there when the Avs won the finals. He was there when the Nuggets won the finals. Outside of that, you do not see him around. And he signs the checks and lets the sports people do the sports things.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not saying that's 100% the way to go. But he is the opposite of Dick Monfort, who is heavily emotionally invested in his team. He's there for almost every game. He shows up wearing Rockies colors and Rockies things. He describes himself as a fan. And he's also incredibly meddlesome in day-to-day operations. That's where they're polar opposites. And what Dick Monfort needs to learn is not the emotional detachment from the team. It's to stop involving himself with day-to-day operations. Dick Monfort, you are not a baseball person. No matter what you think, you are not a baseball guy. You need to let the baseball guys do the baseball things. Because I don't know if y'all are both Denver Broncos fans, but a really good example was Pat Bowlen, where Pat Bowlen incredibly emotionally invested in those Denver Broncos, but he also let the front office do their thing for the most part.
Uh-huh.
And that is what Dick Monfort should strive for. And we make a lot of fun of the fact that Monfort hired both of his sons into the organization, but Stan Kroenke did that as well. Josh Kroenke, his son, is the real, steward of the Avs and the Nuggets, taking care of the ownership stuff on a day-to-day basis. And you'll see him around much more in games, but then he is not the guy making the decisions. It's like Dick Monfort had his hands in the Nolan Arenado trade, had his hands in the Ian Desmond contract, had his hands in all of these other snafus in this team's history. And that's the main thing for me, is that the attitude of the ownership towards what their role is needs to change.
Yeah, and you think of, it's fine if Dick Monfort wants to be involved, but he needs to be surrounded by really good baseball people, or people who know the sport and the business and what it means to build a great team. Why are the Colorado Avalanche so successful? Who's at the helm of the Avalanche? Oh, only one of the greatest hockey players in NHL history, in Joe Sakic. And he's surrounded by good other hockey people who are, the GM now, because he's president of hockey operations now.
Mhm.
And then he's still got a good GM under him that he works with, and throughout their whole system. Same with the Nuggets. People were worried when the Nuggets lost. That you can tell, you can see
Tim
the
Connolly.
scenes.
Yeah,
Tim
Connolly,
when they lost him,
when he went off to the Timberwolves.
But they were still able to surround themselves with good basketball people who then could finally put it all together and create a championship team, and have been building to that over the years. Where you look at the Colorado Avalanche and the Denver Nuggets, where were they? Several years ago, like 2013, 2014, where were those teams? Not doing too great. But then you've seen over the years how they are able to rebuild themselves into the powerhouse organizations that they are right now. It's something that the Rockies have struggled to do throughout their history. Those guys turned around in like 5-6 years, whereas the Rockies were still on year 31. They're trying to turn things around.
You can really compare all three teams with their last 5-6 years. You start with the Avalanche, who in 2016 were one of the single worst hockey teams. They were by points the worst team in the NHL. And you weren't really sure if Joe Sakic as the GM was going to work. And they worked on building this incredibly competitive team with a core of really important guys. Your Mikko Rantanens, your Nathan McKinnons, your Gabe Landeskog's, Cale Makar, the key top liner guys. And then the goal from there is to surround them with the pieces to make it a successful and cohesive unit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the Denver Nuggets, where after Carmelo Anthony left, that team kind of reverted back into being a bit of a joke again. And then what happens? They draft Nikola Jokic. They draft Jamal Murray. And they have their 1-2 punch. They have their core. And then the rest of that time has been assembling the pieces around them to make it a single cohesive unit. And that's why this year we had arguably the best Nuggets team I've ever watched, where you had Jokic and Murray and Michael Porter Jr., who's finally healthy. And then you have key role players like, Bruce Brown and all these other guys. And then you look at the Rockies, who in 2017 and 2018 made swift playoff exits, and they have been just kind of listless ever since. And they never really found their core. It was trying to hang on to old pieces and bring in other old pieces, and not committing to doing what needed to be done. And that was an actual rebuild, however long it needed to take, of finding your core and building around it.
I guess I'll interject here too, because I've seen all of the major sports in Denver, the John Elway years with the Broncos, and that too was using those core, John Elway, Rod Smith, Terrell Davis, and that offensive line. Well, it was like they pieced it all together, and boom, they had the back-to-back Super Bowl wins. And they're, as we look at the trends this year, hopefully they've made some major changes of personnel, and hopefully we'll see the Denver Nuggets back up, on the
Broncos.
positive trending side. those with the Avalanche, that they pieced it together, and we're gonna ride this. You know, it's exciting to see this next year of what pieces, because this year it was an early exit. They still have that core, and so they're gonna piece it together. You know, even the Colorado Rapids have a title. They won the MLS Cup years ago, and it wasn't that long ago, but even they have one. And we're still trying to relive our Rocktober time with the Rockies, right? If it wasn't for that super long layoff, you know, we could have had a better shot against the Red Sox. But I think we're still stuck in that, and I think Dick Monfort's still stuck on that Rocktober, and have it. So for me, it's like you guys said, if he could step back and be like, I'm going to put in baseball guys. Yeah, Bill Schmidt's a baseball guy, but there's somebody out there that put together some championship Royals teams that's, you know, could be, you know, there's guys out there that I think bring in some fresh air to the organization, make some changes, and let them do the baseball stuff. And be like the Crockies that, all right, you guys do you, okay? Because, you know, we're putting the money for this team. Build us a winner. And, you know, if you're wanting to go spend big, we'll sit down and talk about it. You give me your case, and we'll see if we fork over the money. But if we can get that, you know, get them out of the deluxe seats right behind home plate. No, you guys go up in your owner's box and not act a show, and let the baseball guys deal with the baseball. Because you know, and when they finally figure this out, you know, I'll finally make it to Denver to the parade, because I missed out on the Avalanche one. We missed out on the Nuggets one, but that Rockies one, I'm gonna be there, painted in purple, crying my eyes out. You know, when they made the 2007 run, crying on the floor of my college apartment, and my roommate's like, one was from New Mexico, and this other guy was like, dude, what is wrong with it? I'm like, oh,
you don't understand.
Yeah, you know, I'm doing the Todd Helton pose when they won, you know, and it was cool because I was playing baseball, college baseball at CSU Pueblo, and Clint Hurdle came down to do a little keynote speech or something for the athletic teams. And afterwards I went up to him, I was like, Mr. Hurdle, you know, I cried so hard when you guys finally made it. And he's like, oh, we did too. And I was like even then I was like, oh, you know, because that's just how much they mean. And I think Rockies we deserve it, and the city of Denver deserves it. And it'll be such a great moment because of all those excuses, the altitude, this, that, and the other, and we've only gone to the playoffs 5 times in our 30-year history, and the time that we finally put all those pieces together, it's going to be amazing. And hopefully, I'm not an old man by then that I can actually enjoy it. You know, I don't want somebody to push me in a wheelchair to go see this parade.
Yeah, we don't want
right up in there.
We don't want to be those, you know, 102-year-old Cubs fans getting wheeled to the TV in the nursing home. I remember when ice cream at the stadium cost a nickel. That's nice, Grandpa. And it's like, it really is. The Rockies, Dick Monfort especially, they show how they're stuck in the past with how, like, they don't really celebrate a lot of the really early stuff until like this year or even other periods. It's always the Rocktober guys. And you can celebrate your past without being entrenched in it. The Avs obviously celebrate 2001 as one of like the biggest things to ever happen in that franchise, but they moved on from it. And the Nuggets, of course, you know, you have 94 when we beat the Sonics. But another crazy thing that makes these teams really similar in the last, you know, 10 years or so for all three of them is that they've had like the one-star player who gets disgruntled and wants out. Rockies had Arenado, and the Avs had Matt Duchene, and the Nuggets had Carmelo Anthony. And the thing is, that the Nuggets and the Avs moved on and utilized that to improve their teams.
Mm-hmm.
And the Rockies didn't.
Yeah, and like you said, you learn from the past, you don't live there. And it goes back to what we talked about with how the Rockies construct their roster. There's a joke I saw somebody on Twitter that the Rockies kind of pulling guys that they have a 2013 baseball prospectus handbook, but they don't realize it's from 2013. They look to that past and try to relive that instead of looking to the future of that's where we need to get to. How are we going to get there? Instead of that's where we were. What guys can help us replicate the success of that year again? But those guys don't exist. Get with the times and move forward, progress.
That was 15 years ago. Baseball's not the same game.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to cut funding to the baseball spending.
Yeah, you can't be spending so much off the field to improve your team, Evan. It's barbaric to be spending on technology.
Analytics are ruining the game.
Ugh. Probably says the team that has never won their division.
The Atlanta Braves have won this division.
Yeah. The Atlanta Braves have more NL West division titles in the Rockies' history than the Rockies do.
We came so close. We came so close that one year. Was it 2017? Where
2018.
2018, we were just barely behind the Dodgers. And if I think about how if we had just embraced the modern game and done what had to be done, that could have been the year.
Mm-hmm. Or even building upon that window of contention, because it goes back to that conversation with the Nuggets and the Avalanche. They were in the playoffs. They were consistently in the playoffs, but just couldn't get over that hump. Whether it's getting knocked out of the second round or the Nuggets, it's usually getting knocked out of the first or second round. They enter that offseason, okay, here's our core, here are our good pieces. What needs to get us over the hump? Okay, it's these guys that we need that can, be that supporting cast of role players that can help us get up there.
Yeah.
You think of Cogliano last year for the Avalanche, those guys that they brought in, whether it's their trades, free agent signings, waiver pickups, whatever, they bring in the role players that can help them plug the holes and reinforce. And the Rockies didn't do that. They had that window after 2018. Okay, what do? Well, let's get Daniel Murphy.
Yeah.
Instead
they let it slam shut. And like the Nuggets, how huge that Aaron Gordon trade turned out to be.
Mm-hmm. That or like even those little minor guys, Bruce Brown this year, a draft of that Christian Brown. These other guys that just kind of popped up, some of these veterans. We go back to that veterans. They didn't fill their team up with veterans like LeBron always does with the Lakers. No, they brought in some separate role players that veteran here and there that can just be a good influence on the team and pick up some minutes here and there. So then Jokic and Murray can come in and do their thing or have some confidence that they don't have to do it all, but they have a team around them.
And you can have your elder statesmen. You can have your Jeff Greens, your DeAndres, your Ish Smiths even, but know what role they are filling. They're not going to go out there and play 40 minutes in a game. The same way with Mike Moustakas is a good veteran pickup for the locker room. He should not be starting every day at first base. He shouldn't be starting as much as he is at first base. But that's the Rockies just being entrenched in a different era of baseball.
Mm-hmm. Remember the good times.
We sing the songs that remind us of the good times. We sing the songs that remind us of the bad times.
It's also going to be hilarious if the Broncos end up winning a Super Bowl this coming season.
Hey, then we got just 2 more years, and it's the Rockies' turn.
There you go.
Do it. I believe
it'll happen one day.
That's the Broncos. Like Dustin, you brought up the Broncos earlier too. Such a good example of like a team where stuff did not work last year, and they made dramatic sweeping changes. Not the Rockies. We don't do that here.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not.
Well, and it's like the Broncos, just to keep it going just for a little bit, is they signed Russell Wilson to that deal. They don't immediately try to, I guess, like kind of boot that off and give up on Russell Wilson. They realize they're stuck with him. And instead of just kind of letting that fester, they go out and they try to improve. They get a new head coach, a coach with a pedigree, and bring in, have him come in. And now they're trying to build up around their weaknesses and kind of mold that team back into a winning culture, because that's what the Broncos have been known for, a prolific organization that's known for winning, for championships, whether it, a couple of Super Bowl titles, but also just championships in general in their respective leagues and divisions and whatever. Same with the Avalanche. I've always kind of thought the Avalanche is that respected organization that had that winning playoff contender nature to them. Same with the Nuggets, looking at their history going back to 1975. They were in the playoffs a ton throughout their history. And that's something that the Rockies are lacking, is they got to figure out how to make that winning culture where the goal is to win, and here's how we're going to get it, and anything less is failure, and we need to make changes so we can get to winning instead of we need to play better. Shrug.
That's baseball.
That's baseball.
That is baseball. And that's going to do it for us here on Affected by Altitude. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're listening on any of your preferred platforms like Spotify, Apple, anything like that, go ahead and leave us a review down on that platform. It helps elevate and boost the podcast and get us more views. We really appreciate y'all listening to us. Skylar, where can the folks find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at sideline_crowd. I'll usually be doing something over there. Every once in a while, there'll be a meme. And then you can find me over on purpleroad.com, writing Wednesday Rock Piles. And then also here with Rocky Mountain Rooftop Network, you can find Dustin and I doing the Every Rocky Ever podcast. It's always a fun time going back over the Rockies' history that we mentioned before and just celebrating some of those forgotten guys and reminiscing about them, all that good stuff.
Dustin, you got anything you want to advertise for yourself?
I'm still trying to figure out the whole Twitter thing at Mr. T Spanish. I'm more of a TikToker, doing stuff. I'm a high school Spanish teacher, so I do a lot of trick shots, kicking bottles into trash cans and whatnot. But I'm trying to get in the same groove with you guys and talking about the Rockies and baseball and interacting in that community. And again, I just wanted to thank you guys for having me on. You guys do great work. And with your articles every week, I love reading them and seeing your guys' perspectives on our beloved. I bleed purple and always will.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. This was awesome. And then you can find me at Evan_Lang27 on the tweeters. Would love to hear from you. You can also find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on Twitter. That's at Rocky Mountain Rooftop, at ROCKYMTN Rooftop. Proud member of the Fans First Sports Network. I also write the Thursday Rock Piles and Thursday game coverage over at www.purplerow.com. Lots of amazing writers and content over there. Be sure to check it out. In the meantime, though, thanks again so much for listening. We'll catch you next time. Dustin, how about you hit him with it?
Farewell.
There we go. Nice.